Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Manhattan Project Warmachine from Grail Games. Warmachine is a 1-to-4 player tableau building Yahtzee style dice rolling game as you try to build up an engine, convert your resources, build up more dice, all those fun things as you go through this experience. This is a prototype, all rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and this is over on Kickstarter. I'll have a link down below to that. But with that, let's go into this game. How does it play? Review, opinions, all that stuff. Starting off the bat with this game, how does it play? Well, across either 4 to 6 rounds of play, depending on the player count. 1 to 2 player games is going to be 6 rounds, 3 player games is going to be 5 rounds, and then 4, 3, 2, 1 for the rest of the players, depending on the player count. You're effectively going to be rolling dice from your dice pool. You're going to be rolling up these dice. You're going to start with 3, although you will have the opportunity to gather more, and you're going to go ahead and roll these dice, and then you must keep at least one result, although you could keep all 3 if you wanted to. Actually, I do happen to like that roll as a good starting roll. For the sake of this example, do I keep rolling? I'll keep rolling. So I'm going to go ahead and keep these 2 here because I think those are useful, and I'm going to re-roll this one result, hoping for an energy. Nope, but let's pretend it's an energy just so I can show you how things go. I actually prefer the other results just for the record, but I just want to show you how this game plays. So once you have your 3 dice, you're going to go ahead and roll them. You do have the opportunity to convert any 2 results to 1 result. Usually that's not the best move because of the, well, giving up a full die, but especially at some points in the game or later in the game, sometimes you really need that 1 roll. From there, you're going to go ahead and start placing the dice onto the board, and then you'll have, well, opportunities. So, you're going to place the dice onto the board, and you're going to be placing them in these 9 areas over here. Now, when you place a die, you can place an energy over here. I can go ahead and place an energy over here and take an energy action, which is effectively a weaker action. But before you do so, you must place a die in the worker spots. There's going to be 3 types of worker spots, as you can see over here. This face, and that face. All those are corresponding to these spots. And then from there, you can place a worker or an energy, or worker or energy. But you have to start with the worker, or you cannot place the energy. So, I'm going to go ahead and place my worker in that spot. We're going to go ahead and place the worker here. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and take $3. You're effectively choosing one of these stronger actions on this board. So over here in each of the 3 sections, you have the darker black area, which is going to have a stronger action, and then you have the lighter gray area, which has a weaker action. When you place a worker, you take one of the 4 stronger actions, and we will go through explaining all of these, but for the most part, they come down to either gaining resources, converting resources into other things, either resources or points, or building buildings. Those are the primary things you're doing. I guess also upgrading. Let's go with that. Building buildings and upgrading. So those are the things you're doing on these actions. But again, I'm placing a worker action over here. I'm going to take $3 and I'm going to move my dollars up over here, and you'll see why I want to do that shortly. But because I took a stronger action, all the other players in the game get to pick any one weaker action, not specifically correlated to the one I chose, but any of the weaker actions they can go ahead and do whenever you take a stronger worker action. From there, I'm going to go ahead and follow that up with this action over here. So we're going to follow that up over here, placing the energy. This time I'm taking a weaker action. Whenever you place an energy, you take a weaker action instead. So I'll go ahead and do. I'm going to take $1. Again, other actions we'll get to shortly. I'm just going to take $1 because I want to have $6, because the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and spend this die. Now this die over here is a wild, but it comes with pros and cons. The con side of using a wild is when you roll a wild, and I should have done this already, you will take a negative victory point. It represents all the pollution, although you have the opportunity to, during the course of the game, you have many ways in which you can flip this, turning it into a positive victory point instead. So it represents a downside, but also potential at the same time. For right now, we're going to go ahead and put that there, and because it's a wild, you can use it as anything. I'm going to use this over here on this region, where I will trade in $6 to gather another die. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade this board over here, gathering another die, which will both give me a 2-point upgrade at the end of the game. Basically, everything you upgrade in this game is going to give you 2 points, but also gives me a die, which I'll be able to roll and use this round even. So I'll have the opportunity now to even place this over here, and go ahead and place this here, getting a weaker action here, where I'll go ahead and trade in a food for victory points. So I'll go down 1 food, up 1 victory point, and that's basically what's happening on these boards. That's the core action sequence. You start by placing your dice over there, you place your dice onto the board, you're going to be trying to get resources, convert things, and again, I'll teach you all the locations in a second, but then when you're done with that, when you're done with all of that, you get to pull back your dice, and you get to assign them to your own buildings over here. Now, this won't be relevant right now because I chose to upgrade a die rather than getting a building, but depending on the economy you build, that first turn, you might choose to gather a building. Now, let's pretend I had a building in play. Let's actually just grab one of these buildings off the top over here. I'm going to grab this building over here. Let's pretend this building was over here in this area. I already had it. It's a later round. When I pull back dice, you can activate your buildings. So I'm going to pull back this dice, placing it over here. Again, you have specific requirements, and the same requirements are in play. You can place an energy, but you need at least 1 worker there. And because I placed a die over here, I will now rotate this building. This building requires a single die to activate. That's what it shows here. We have different types of buildings, generally 4 main types, and I'll show you all of them, although there are some others as well. we're going to have the single activation building, which is this. Over here with 1 die, I will rotate it, and I will get money equal to the positive effects of these I have, which unfortunately I have none. So that building doesn't even help me at the moment, but it could potentially give me up to $4, there's a max 4 on it, if I had a bunch of these and they were turned over and already converted to clean energy and all that. So that's going to be the first type of building you can activate. The second is this one, which requires 2 dice, 1 at a time. Each time you'll rotate and gain the benefit. So this is 2 dice activated twice. This one is a cleanup tile. This is very helpful. If I had this over here, that would be great. In fact, if I had this over here, I could go ahead and place this die over here. Now that I have 2 dice, I can go ahead and rotate this, flipping this to clean energy. And then when I'm done with that, I can go ahead and add because I placed second die, you can go ahead and activate this one where I would gain $1 because of the fact that I have that clean over there, that recycled energy and all that. So when you have those buildings, you have the double die activation, which requires 2 dice to activate. You have the single die activation. You have the 2 dice activating twice. And then you have the game end, simply a point generator over there. Those are the primary buildings you're going to have access to in this game, but that's what you're going to do. So you place your dice over here, you pull your dice back, activating your buildings, and then from there you go ahead to your next person's turn, you clean up, you check for round end, all of that in the game, and you go to the next person's turn where they're going to start rolling dice. They're going to also give you things on your turn because of the fact that whenever they take one of those stronger actions, you'll get a benefit, and you'll continue the cycle across 4 to 6 rounds of play until eventually you go ahead and check for game end stuff, which is where we'll get into some of the nitpicks over here, some of the details. For the most part, as far as these actions here, we have resources. So you get points, so you get money over here. You can convert resources in order to flip or upgrade a building. This expand action lets you convert those to be able to upgrade these. And these are spots for additional buildings. That's what these 3 upgrades are. Plus, of course, 2 points. These are spots for additional resources holding on to. So you can hold on to more resources. Right now, you can only hold 6 food. But you can upgrade that to hold on to 8 food and then 2 points. And then we have the dice upgrades as well. And finally, you can also upgrade your player board, which may benefit as well as 2 points. Plus, you can go ahead and once per turn, you can convert 1 die to anything, which is a little better than converting 2 dice to anything. It gives you freedom and flexibility without the trade-off of losing something. Then from there, you can trade in resources for money. You can go ahead and build a building. There's also going to be the buildings over here, which have little costs on them. Whenever you build a building, things will slide down, new buildings will come out, and you'll start building out your tableau, where when you have a pullback turn, you can start activating a bunch of things. You're always placing things out, activating stuff, giving things to other players, then having a pullback turn where you activate things. Just a whole lot of stuff happening with those handfuls of dice. Over here we have the opportunity to convert 3 money to convert clean energy, then more resources and conversions, and then over here you already saw the dice upgrade here, and then again more resource generating, converting, and all of them have the opportunity to build buildings either at your current area for a discount or at other areas for an increased cost instead. And that is basically what's going on there. At the end of the game, you'll score points for your recycled energy, you'll lose points for your negative atomic energy and all that, you'll score points for your upgrades, you'll score points for all the points you got doing the game, and then you'll also score points for your endgame tiles that will also give you any additional points over there depending on what you have, depending on the conditions. And then finally, you'll also have a card over here that either during the game you'll cash in to say, look, I got this thing, or at the end of the game you'll say, look, I got this thing, one or the other, and it's worth 5 points if you do so. And that is basically how you play Manhattan Project Warmachine. It's rolling dice Yahtzee style. You get up to 3 rerolls. You must save at least 1 die per turn, but you can save more if you want. You assign them to the board, you give other players benefits, you take them back, pull in your own engine, do that 4 to 6 rounds, and see who won the game. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review. Starting off with ease of play, this was incredibly easy to dive into. Now, I do have prototype rules, and I had 1 or 2 small questions that I wasn't 100% certain on, but it was an incredibly short rulebook, very easy to dive into. I'm sure the extra few pages will come from all the exceptions and the things that I had a few small questions on, but it was very easy to get up and running, very easy to teach, very easy to play, and plays pretty quickly too. Generally, depending on the player count, it's going to run somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes. I'm sure it can drag slower than that, but this was a fast-moving, punchy experience. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, first of all, the engine building. This game just gives you a lot of engine building in the game as far as different ways to build up your engine. Whether you go for buildings, whether you build up your dice, whether you start converting those resources as soon as possible, whether you start upgrading more and more tiles. There are multiple pathways you can take as far as how you try to build up stuff in the game, and everything is important. You can get a turn 1 building and start getting in those building actions as soon as possible. You can also get a turn 1 extra die as you saw me do, and you can get that up and running as soon as possible. A turn 1 die can mean a turn 2 die very quickly, and possibly a turn 2 building, and your engine just starts moving in the game. And because of the fact that in shorter player counts, you have more rounds, you'll get more done that way. In larger player counts, you have more extra stuff coming your way from the other player's turns, so you need fewer rounds to do things. So there's just a lot of stuff happening in the game as you go through it, and you can build up that engine in different ways, different pathways as far as what you do and how you do it, where you assign the dice, what's the best return, where you're going to get additional points, or alternatively, do you start cashing in resources for points earlier in the game, or do you want to continue building up that engine up through the final round and see how much stuff you can get that way? If you get a whole bunch of game endpoint buildings, that can be a big chunk of extra points in the game. There's just a lot of things to consider. And then you just get things on other people's turns, which is always a nice thing. When you roll your dice and I get to start choosing things, that is a fun thing that, well, it's fun to get stuff on your turn. It's fun to go ahead and you roll a bunch of dice and suddenly I'm getting resources or building buildings or doing things in the game, even when it's not my turn, and I generally enjoy and appreciate that aspect. And it works well at different player counts to an extent. I think 4 rounds to me felt a little bit less as far as being able to activate my buildings as much as I want, even though the balance still works out because you're getting stuff, but I like activating the buildings and building. But both at 5 and 6 work well, meaning 5 and 6 rounds, or 2 and 3 players respectively, because at the 2-player game, the game's moving super fast, you get things on other people's turns, and you have 6 rounds of play. At a 3-player game, you have 1 less round, but 5 rounds is still a good number, and you're getting twice as much stuff on other people's turns, which is fun and still a fairly quick game. We'll get to one thing I don't like about that stuff shortly, but yeah, overall, different player counts works fairly well, and again, even at 4, it still moves pretty quickly. I just wish I had a bit more building activation built in there. Additionally, the wilds are negative, but then positive. That fact that you're rolling these dice over here, it's fun to get those wilds because, first of all, they're flexible. You can use them where you want, both in the putting them out and the pulling them back. But then additionally, getting negative stuff over here is only a bad thing if you don't find a way to convert it, and there often are ways to not only convert it, but as you've seen from some of these tiles over here, to even benefit from it, to be able to get extra resources based on once you do convert it, which is also a nice thing. It's giving you that extra flexibility in there, which is very solid and very enjoyable to go through. And then lastly, I'll say that this whole player board area is a very modular layout. Every single one of these pieces is different in the way that they're all separate pieces over here. You can construct it, lengthwise, this-wise. It's a small thing, but especially if you're playing it at higher player counts, that modular layout is a quality of life upgrade. As far as what I don't like in the game, a few small things over here. First of all, I'm not a fan of while I am a fan of the layout, I'm not a fan of the general art style. It's fine, and I don't think it's bad in any way. It's just not my jam. It feels very propaganda-y in the general approach of it, which it's very thematic to what it's doing, but also I just don't like World War II stuff in general, and so less to my genre in general as far as the immediate appeal. I believe this is based on the original Manhattan Project line, and I'm a big fan of general, more cartoony stuff. It's less realistic, and it's just a question of target audience, but for me that's more my personal vibe as far as the art and presentation aspect. Secondly, the building activation, this is a bigger one for me. The building activation gets way too easy way too quickly. When you build out a row of 5 buildings and they're all activating, and they all activate off the same dice when you're playing through this, meaning you don't have to really sit there and agonize over what happens. Getting a nice run of buildings up and running fairly quickly, it starts to feel less like a challenge. Early game it does. The first round or 2, yes, it's a challenge. Once you have them there, you may as well just cash in and get more buildings. You'll start building up just tons of resources because they're all activating on the same dice. Once you put 2 dice down there, there's no real reason to have a 3rd dice for the most part. They're all activating, they're all getting things done. It became a little bit too procedural as far as getting them in play, which just made it less challenging to actually, get things done. And additionally, I wish the energy activations were a bit more varied. What I mean by that is effectively when you get that extra energy on someone else's turn, for the most part, especially the first few rounds of the game, for the most part, people are just taking resources. Oh, you went ahead and took 2 food, I'll take 1 food. You took 3 money, I'll take 1 money. For the most part, the extra actions, the building and conversions, I found the conversions to generally be not great. For the most part, you get a much better return when you convert things on your turn, and so it's just almost felt not worth it to do conversions in the game, and few people ever really converted things on other people's turns. And then the building things does happen, but that ends up being more of a later thing because early game you don't have as much resources to do a ton of it, and so I found that most of the, hey, you did something and I get something, it didn't feel like there's a ton of choice, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because the next complaint I have is the fact that the way the game is structured, it's I take my stuff after you place your die. So you place your die over here, and then I choose right when you do your thing, and then I take my thing. I don't wait till all your dice are placed, I have to take my thing. Which especially means at higher player counts, you effectively have, you place a die, and then 3 people have to make a minor decision. So again, the fact that the decision was very easy to make most of the time meant that it wasn't that hard, but you still have to go, I placed a die, you, okay, I placed a die, you. You do have to check and ask and pause, and it slows down the placement. I kind of wish the turn structure was instead, I place all my dice, and then you go ahead and choose. I understand there might be reasons not to do that, but I think it would speed up the game significantly as far as just not slowing down the game after every single dice to be able to ask every single person what they want to do. Again, it changes some of the strategy because now I know a little bit more in advance, and maybe you'll take that building. It could change things, but I think it would accelerate how fast that actual dice placement moved. Again, understanding this is still a fast-moving game, I just think it could be even faster if something like that were in play. As far as what I can see others not liking, two things. First of all, in general, the theme again. For me, it's more about the art than the theme. I'm just not into the general art and aesthetic. But if you don't like World War II, this is, World War II and factories and all that stuff in the game. That's ultimately what the game is, and so factor that in. And secondly, getting dice upgraded seems to be fairly essential. I would say that while there are a lot of pathways you can take as far as what you do first in the game, or as far as, for instance, two things are essential. Building buildings and getting dice are essential. Which one you do, the order you take them, that's more up to you. And some of the upgrades over here, the various upgrades I would say are not essential for the most part. You can choose when and where and all that, but you kind of have to have more dice and you kind of have to have more buildings. It's kind of the part of the engine that you're going towards. That is something you have to get done. It's just, I don't think you have a chance of winning if you don't do both of those things, and both of those things as soon as possible. It's an essential component of your engine. As far as final thoughts on Manhattan Project War Machine, I have a tough time with this one. There are aspects of this game that I really like. And to be clear, tough just means a question of good versus very good. It's not a question of whether I like this. I like this game. I like Manhattan Project War Machine. It moved quickly. It gave you a tableau. It gave you engine building. It gave you pathways as far as how you choose that engine building. You get things on other people's turns. You're getting things when you put things out and when you pull things back. It just gives you a lot of good things as you play through the experience. I think there are aspects of it. Part of it might be the theme, part of it might be the semi-procedural aspect of what you're doing, and part of it might be this fact that you just have, that same processes in place every single game. It didn't feel like things were vastly different as far as how these buildings upgraded. You're going through the same punchy, fast, let me try to build my resource engine as fast as possible as you go through the game. For me, this is one that's it's bordering on a 4. I think that, and I'm hesitant exactly where I end up, because I feel like calling it a 3.5 out of 5 would be a little bit unfair to how much I enjoy this, but I'm also not sure it's quite out of 4. I think this goes to the whole prototype conversation. This is a prototype, rules, components, all that stuff subject to change. A few small tweaks could really push that over the edge to me. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it. It's fast, it's punchy, it does a good job, it gives you I could just repeat myself. It's fast, it's punchy, and it does a good job as far as Yahtzee rolling dice and upgrading your tableau and doing all of that in 30 to 45 minutes and giving you a very rewarding experience while you do so. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Furnace. Furnace is going to be another resource generating engine that also plays in a short playtime from Arcane Wonders, another solid one that I can recommend. And then if you want another dice placement, build up your engine tableau building game that focuses more heavily on the dice, Raja of the Ganges is one that takes a little longer to play, but it has a very brightly lit palette and a lot more different things to consider as you go through that journey. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.